So my name is Walter Bradley. I'm the former chairman of the Department of Neurology of the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Well, obviously the main problem about ALS is that we don't have a way of being able to cure it. We have one drug which has been available to us now for about 15 years or something like that, called Riluzole, that slows down the progress of the disease by maybe 15 or 20%. And in this last 15, 20 years, we've been doing large numbers of trials trying to find other drugs which will add to the benefit of Riluzole. The great difficulty is that if you don't know what causes a disease, you really can't design treatments that are going to cure it. And the way that things work in terms of the neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease is we try to develop animal models, mice that may have the abnormal gene that is present in familial ALS, or might have some toxin that is producing death of motor neurons, and then try and develop drugs that will prevent or decrease the amount of damage or the rate of death of those animals. Now, we must have studied probably 30 or 40 different drugs in very large and very expensive trials, and so far, unfortunately, none of those have turned up to be any have a sufficient benefit to be able to be released by the FDA. There's a new NOP drug that is just being launched into phase 3 studies. I believe the company has been bought by another larger company, and that hopefully is going to provide the funding to do a large study. This drug is it's an interesting drug. Pramipexole is a drug which is used to treat Parkinson's disease. And like amino acids, there's a D form and an L form. The L form of pramipexole is the effective medication that can benefit patients with Parkinson's disease. It's a dopaminergic medication. It stimulates, in fact, the dopamine receptors. Now, there is a D form of this, which in fact is quite ineffective. It has no effect whatsoever on the dopamine receptor. But it does have, in tissue culture and in some animal experiments, it does have a neuroprotective effect. And Dr. Jim Bennett was the first one to recognize this and start to develop it for treatment because that was his interest in particular, treatment of ALS. And there have been phase 1 studies that show it's relatively non-toxic in really quite high doses. There have been phase 2 studies which suggest that there is a benefit, a dose response curve, a dose-related slowing down of the progress of ALS. Therefore, there's certainly some good pointers to the hope that we may be in phase 3 studies be able to demonstrate that it actually is of benefit. And then hopefully, if that's the outcome, we'll be able to see if it works in addition to Riluzole, if we can get Riluzole slowing it down 20% and maybe the D-pramipexole slowing it down maybe another 20-30%. Maybe then we'll start to see some real clinically observable benefit in ALS patients. Well, that's one of the real sort of conundrums that we all deal with. The oncologists deal with this all the time. They may not be able to cure the disease, but they may be able to give you a few more months or a few more years even of life. And is that worthwhile? And there's all this question of the quality of life. I have to tell you, from looking after 10,000 patients with ALS over 45 years, that virtually all of them, if given the opportunity to have a medication like this that slowed their disease progress by, let's say, 30%, gave them a third more years when they were in good clinical state, they take it in a heartbeat. So I don't think there's any real question that from the patient's point of view, that would be a benefit. Now, the interesting thing about riluzole, and perhaps even with this new drug, if the phase 3 studies come out, that it's beneficial, many of the neurologists are fairly cynical. I mean, neurologists, unfortunately, have not had very many drugs which they're able to cure diseases with. They've got a fair number of drugs that can suppress epilepsy, can benefit Parkinson's disease, can limit pain and so forth. But curative drugs, there are not many. And obviously that's been the holy grail for neurologists for the last 2 or 3 generations. Can we find something that will cure the disease? And unfortunately, riluzole is not that, and almost undoubtedly D-pramipexole is not going to be that either. But gradually over time, neurologists, I think, have got to be understanding of the place that their patients are in, and the fact that their patients want things like this, and therefore are beginning to be willing to use these drugs. Now, the only problem is they're expensive, and that's yet another of those conundrums. How much can we spend to give somebody a relatively limited extension of their life period?